Two stories today. Still a state of shock in California and in Washington, where Bobby Inman says he can stand the heat, joining others who are getting out of the kitchen.
Live from CNN New York, intelligent talk for intelligent people with Dr. Sonya Friedman.
Hello again. We start with the earthquake crisis in Southern California, and we go to CNN's Susan Rook in Los Angeles. Give us an update, Susan.
All right, Sonia, there are now 43 people confirmed dead in the Northridge earthquake. California Governor Pete Wilson estimates the damage could be between $15 and $30 billion. And for the survivors of this earthquake, inconvenient is definitely an understatement. For commuters, their headache is on the roads and the highways here, especially if they try and use the highways and freeways. Stretches of 11 major thoroughfares are closed because of serious damage that transportation officials say could be repaired by the end of the year. On one freeway, for example, it took some drivers as long as 4 hours to travel just 10 miles. So for San Fernando Valley residents, the water supply could become inconvenient. Crews are working just as fast as they can to repair ruptured aqueducts by this day's end. Otherwise, conservation measures may be in order. Some 30,000 customers don't even have water. For the newly homeless, living in shelters is their convenience. The Red Cross says 3,800 people stayed in its 22 LA shelters overnight. Thousands more camped out in parks and yards, just simply afraid to be inside. Housing Secretary Henry Cisneros promises the federal government will act quickly to get these people into shelter. Now, for the people of LA, the aftershocks are more than just an inconvenience. They can still be very unnerving. A strong aftershock measuring 4.5 on the Richter scale shook the ground this morning just a little bit after 6 o'clock local time. Here's what it looked like on the air at our affiliate station KTLA. And President Clinton is promising not to inconvenience area residents who are already suffering through this. He says that he will not travel on freeways when he arrives here today. He is expected within the hour. But for more now on how some of the refugees are coping with their life in tents, tent cities, and at Red Cross stations, CNN's Charles Jaco is standing by in San Fernando. Charles, what's going on there now?
Now, Susan, right now you've got a lot of people who are preparing lunch. There's some corn that's being roasted. A lot of kids are playing football and that sort of stuff. This belies the scene overnight. There were several hundred people in this field overnight. It was bitterly cold, at least by Southern California standards. People were huddled up trying to make the best of things. And then, as you said, about 6 o'clock this morning, there was a mild earth tremor, then a loud bang, and the earth shifted a few inches. And these people woke up with a start, as did the people who were in the Red Cross shelter behind them. A lot of these people's homes weren't destroyed. The reason they're here is that they're afraid to come back into their homes and stay there at night. The homes are only damaged, but they don't want to stay there at night in case something like this happens again. We're led to understand that county and city building inspectors will be coming around here later today, taking some of these people back to their homes, trying to check out how badly they're damaged, and trying, however little they can try, to help these people rebuild their lives. Susan?
Thanks, Charles, and we will continue to keep you updated on the situation here. As we said, President Clinton expected to arrive within this hour. Sonia?
Susan, I'm curious if you could tell me something about the mood of the people. Frustration has to be starting to set in now that the major part of the damage is seen. People are inconvenienced. They may not have water and power. They're not sure if their homes are structurally sound. How are they dealing with it?
Sonia, really the mood, it kind of depends on where you go and what happened to you. For example, when the aftershock hit, a CNN crew and I, we were going out on a story. We were pausing to have a bite to eat, and as we were eating, the lights started shaking, and you could feel the shaking motion of the aftershock, and it was a 4.5 on the Richter scale, and quite honestly, nobody in the restaurant even thought twice about it. But in that area, there wasn't extensive damage. The lights are on, the power's on, the water's turned on. When you go to, as Charles Jaco just reported, in the Red Cross shelters, those people are scared, and that aftershock really shook them. There's a woman I know here, her apartment building has been condemned, her office building where she works has been condemned. She's homeless, she has no place of business, and she lost her cat. She's upset, inconvenienced, and worried what will come tomorrow. And then certainly for the friends and the family of the 43 people who lost their lives in this earthquake, I'm sure you can understand their mood.
Absolutely.
It's an entire mixture. And one of the weird things is there's almost a cavalier spirit in parts. You're a professional psychologist. I'm sure you could explain that better than I can. But it's almost a survivor spirit in the sense of, hey, I did it, I'm indestructible, nothing can happen.
I'm glad you brought that up, that there are such a variety of attitudes. And Susan, of course, will stay with you for a variety of updates through the day. But right now, let's go to Dr. Robert Scott, who is a psychologist also, a specialist, however, in disaster response. He's in Los Angeles responding to the human crisis there. As Susan was saying, there are a variety of attitudes. Is there a healthy response? I mean, after all, what occurred is pathology. What people feel should be kind of a normal response to that.
Absolutely. One of the key phrases we're using today and throughout most of the disaster work we do is we try to tell people that they're having normal reactions to very abnormal events. And helping to normalize the reactions is a key part of the work we do.
One of the things I noted as Susan was talking to Charles Jaco was children playing out in the field. And I thought about some of the World War II studies. For those people who think maybe this is a good time to get their kids out with relatives in other states, what do you suggest to them?
No, I would tend to discourage that. I think separation anxiety is really heightened at this point, and we want kids and parents to be very close and together. The support they're going to experience from being with their families, being with their friends, is essential to the recovery. So I would really discourage moving kids away from their family units. That is one of the key sources of support.
Robert, as I think about the fact that a lot of people want to go back to their homes and to check it out, we know that there may be some structural damage that could not be seen with the eye. How do you say to yourself, it's better that I don't go until I'm told it's safe, while you worry about looting and other kinds of things disappearing?
Well, there's a lot of stressors right now on these individuals, on the victims and survivors, and certainly going back to the home if it's not safe is not the best thing to do. So we're out there at shelters. There's lots of support, counseling, intervention available, and we'll try to provide a cushion and some empathy and understanding for these individuals, and we will tend to discourage them from going back to an unsafe property.
It's interesting, however, that one of the calls that did get through yesterday was a friend of mine who said, which is the better or healthier response, Sonya, to go back to work and to function and take care of what needs to be done, or to take a few days off and to let this all settle in and somehow think about it? What would you say, Doctor?
Well, that's a good question. Everybody's going to need to make choices that are in agreement and that fit with their own coping mechanisms. For some, it might be really good to get back to work, to just get back to normal routines. For others who may have had a much more intense impact, and remember, there's a variety of different experiences depending how close you were to ground zero and what kinds of events took place in your home. For some people, they were trapped inside their homes or apartments and they couldn't get out. For others, it was an easy access out to the front door, or they stayed until the shaking stopped and went outside. So depending on the intensity of the trauma or the intensity of the reactions, some people may need a couple days off, and that wouldn't be a bad thing for them. So I'm really, everybody comes from a different station and a different place, and we like to talk about flexibility and give people lots of options how to deal with
Dr.
this.
Scott, we're going to do that, but I love the fact that you said this is time for each of us to be the expert in how we feel we might relate best and kind of stand to that, because it gives a sense of control, which is such an important point. We're going to toss to Lou Waters right now. Lou?
We will get back now to Sonya live in New York.
Thank you, Lou. And we continue with our discussion about the effects of the earthquake in Los Angeles. The most tragic location on Monday was a Northridge Meadows apartment where Mike Cabesi lived on the top floor. Mike, that complex just fell apart. I believe 16 people were killed. How did you get out?
By a miracle. When it first happened, it was so frightening. It was dark, it was cold, I was disoriented, and finally I was able to locate a flashlight and proceeded out. I heard a neighbor yell out to me, "Are you okay?" I quickly replied, "I'm fine. I just, let me get out." He says, "Well, we got to go help Norm, one of our other neighbors." So I tried to open my front door. It wouldn't open. I asked him to kick it in. He couldn't. He says, "Don't bother." He says, "The wall's wide open. Just open your closet."
Wow.
Yeah, so I opened my closet, and sure enough, between my water heater and the wall, it just sheared open. So I crawled through there, out onto the third floor hallway, and we proceeded to just pull our neighbors out to safety.
You pulled out 8 to 10 people. Were they cooperative? Could they wait for you? Was there a lot of panic going on at the moment?
They were terrified. They were scared, but it seemed that if you would yell at them, look at them right in the eye, we had flashlights, and gain their trust. I'll be right there. I'm here. I'm going to come and get you. Stay calm. We're here. Just those kind of things gain their trust. And then we just worked on each individual situation to get them, down to safety.
Mm-hmm. Was there anyone, or maybe a few people who you heard or tried to help and couldn't get to, or couldn't get to in time?
The first floor was smashed, and I knew, some of the people who lost their lives. There wasn't anything you can do. There was no access. There was the crawl space. You can't even fathom. There was once a room, and now there's nothing. And we just worked on clearing the third and second floors.
What has this all done to you?
I don't know yet. I've just been going since 4:30 Monday morning. I got about 3 hours sleep yesterday. I'm okay, and I'll be fine. It's just every time I tell the story, you just think about it a little bit more.
Right.
But I'm doing all right.
Right. Robert Scott, delayed response. I mean, I think a lot of people like Mike, and what a hero he is.
Absolutely.
Now things start to calm down. Does it all flood you and takes a different kind of a toll?
Well, Mike's like a lot of survivors of disaster. He's did so beautifully in the moment of impact in the crisis. In fact, I don't know if he's had any training in this area, but the comments he made and the way he approached the helping of others was, that's textbook. We would encourage people to act in the manner he did. Strong, reassuring voice, commanding, telling them what to do, how they'll be helped, and so forth. He's a great crisis intervener. Yeah. I think what he also demonstrates is the heroic phase of disaster response. I mean, we have the impact and the pre-warning, then we have the heroic stage that people do amazing things. They're full of adrenaline, and they're just thankful to be alive.
Right,
and
but he's not finished yet. I must say that when Mike leaves us, he's going to have yet another interview. This one, very, very special. You're going to be meeting with President Clinton. Do you have a sense of what you want to say to him or share with him?
I was notified at 12:30 a.m. that I'm going to have the privilege to meet the president. That hasn't even sunk in yet. I've just been running from network to network and sharing the story. I'm flattered. Yeah. I don't know what I'm going to say.
Right. Well, we are delighted that you could have certainly joined us. To the knowledge of just meeting you and to see how you affected your behavior is a wonderful example and a role model to others. Thanks. We'll be right back. With everything else that Angelenos are worried about, you know that they are all thinking about the next one, the really big one. With us to talk about whether or not there is a reality to that fear, Dr. Paul Somerville, who is a seismologist. Is there going to be a big one? Maybe this was it.
This was not the big one. The big one is a large earthquake that occurs from time to time on the San Andreas Fault. The most recent one of those occurred in 1857. And so this was not the big one. The big one is about 20 miles north of this one.
How do you know that? I mean, how can you be so sure? Do you have a predictability factor?
Well, geological studies have shown that on average there's a large earthquake on the San Andreas Fault about every 137 years. Sometimes it's shorter than that, sometimes it's longer. But we've got a record of about 10 of these events. And so there certainly will be another big one. We don't really know when, but it's been estimated that there's about a 30% chance that it will occur in the next 30 years.
Let's take a call on that less than comforting note as we go to Hollywood, California. Say hello to Daryl. Welcome.
Hi. Hi, Sonia. I wanted to find out why the media continues to say things like, well, you know, we got through that one, but that wasn't the big one, when people are trying to heal and get over what just happened. I mean, when we were trying to escape our building in the hallway, all we could think about was, this is the one they've been talking about. I mean, when you're in the middle of it, it seems like, and it just went on forever, first of all. It just seemed never to stop. Mm-hmm. And for the media, you get up the next day, and all of a sudden the media's saying, well, you know, that was horrible, but that wasn't the big one.
Dr. Scott, that's actually the question I asked Dr. Somerville just then. How do you know? Maybe this was really it. Should we deny or not look at this and pay attention to today? Are we being irresponsible?
Well, I think we're not being sensitive to the people in Southern California. Today and in the next couple days and maybe even weeks is not the time to start talking about the big one. I think we need a little bit of recovery time to just get a sense of ourselves and our losses, and we're going to be quickly moving from the heroic honeymoon phase into the disillusionment phase, when all the media attention stops and people start to really take a look around and see the losses they've incurred. It's going to hurt, and all the emotion and feelings are going to surface. So right now, as we're just moving through these various stages, I think scaring people more is not the proper thing to do. I think discussions about the big one can wait. I think the issue is we do live in earthquake country. We need to take the lessons we've learned today and over the last 48 hours and start to really apply the preparedness information that's been given to us by scientists and people who are expert in this field.
I would like to, if I may, just give a slightly different point of view to
sure,
that question that the
sure.
call had. Let me first ask Mike, are you going to stay in a home in California? Do you intend to allow this to change your residence?
Presently, my parents live about 5 miles from where the apartment was, and I'll stay with them for a short period of time. I'm going to stay in Southern California. If I ever left Los Angeles, it would be because of the traffic, not because of earthquakes.
Okay, having said that, let me go back to Dr. Somerville. If there might be one of a greater intensity, and I've certainly heard suggestions that it would be in about the 8 range. I was in California in '87 when we had a 6.4, so I know what that feels like. Might we not use the issue of how buildings are structured, where people live, whether or not there are areas they should not live in, to help them live a safer life?
Oh, I agree. I think we should look at the possible effects of a big earthquake on the San Andreas Fault. But I think there's a good chance that those effects may be less severe than the effects of the earthquake we've just been through, because this one was right in the middle of our urban area. So just because we call it the big one doesn't mean it's going to be more severe in every respect than what we've just been through. Obviously, it will not be more severe than what happened at Northridge. So I think we need to carefully look at the scenarios of what might happen in the big one. And that requires a bit of work because we haven't had one since 1857, so we don't know a lot about that event. But we need to try and imagine and calculate what might happen.
So Mike Cabeza, you may be the person who really shows the resolve that I'm a Californian, true and blue, and it doesn't matter what happens here, I stay.
Yeah, I think it was yesterday in North Dakota with the wind chill, it was minus 91. I don't want that, no thanks. I'm here.
You'll take your chances right here.
That's right.
Gentlemen, I thank you for being here. What a great attitude, and I know what a privilege and pleasure it's going to be for you to be able to be presented to the President, Mike, and thanks
Thank you.
again for sharing your story with us. When we continue, we're going to take a look at a different kind of story. We're going to look about what's happening in the inside of the Washington Carter and why.